during talk therapy that week, they'll figure out, you're afraid to confront your boss, you're afraid to do this or that. And then they'll send their client home and say, I want you to do a couple virtual EMDR sessions on this particular issue this week. And then I want you to come back next week to talk therapy. And I want you to tell me what kind of results you got, how you're feeling differently about the problem or issue with your boss.
Behavioral Health Integrations Podcast strives to inspire the next generation of mental health and addiction specialists. Our aim is to continue to raise awareness and encourage collaboration in the mental health and addiction industry so that it will continue to thrive. There are numerous approaches to treating mental health and substance abuse issues. On this show, we take pleasure in showcasing the diversity of these approaches used to improve the lives of others. So without further ado, your host, Jacob Menig.
Well, Jeffrey, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here, Jacob. I'm glad that we finally had a chance to connect.
Yes, and this is like great timing because like 3 to 6 months ago, I went through EMDR training myself through Zoom and everything. So I'm not certified, but I'm considered a trained practitioner in EMDR or a trained therapist. So this will be a really cool episode for all of us.
Great. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to talk about my experiences with EMDR.
Absolutely. And just to start, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of like where you grew up and your experiences and everything. And
Yeah, so I mean, this is crazy. You can hear by my accent and the way that I speak, I'm American, but I live in Singapore. I'm 10,000 miles away, and I've been here for 10 years now, and just that's the way that that's just kind of the way that things turned out in my life. I had an opportunity to come over here, and the work that I do is completely on the internet, so I never left. But I'm from the Midwest in America. I grew up in Chicago, and then I spent 25 years in Colorado. And then before I came here, and I just came here, it's crazy to think back on. I just had a big suitcase. That's it. Like I got rid of everything that I owned and came here with a big suitcase. And it's been 10 years that I've lived in Southeast Asia now.
what's your favorite part in living in Southeast Asia?
Oh, so
Or maybe it's probably a lot better, especially in the winter times over here, but
there's a couple things that I really enjoy. When you live in this part of the world, traveling, when you live in Singapore, everything is near me. Uh, um, uh, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, like you really have a lot of places that you can see. And I've been beyond blessed in my life that, by the way, one of the reasons I got into EMDR, one of them was a fear of flying. And I hadn't been on a plane for 11 years. I was terrified to get on a plane. And now, thanks to EMDR, uh, um, I've been, I think, in about 40 countries around the world. So one of the cool things about living in this part of the world is you're sort of close to a lot of different countries and a lot of different cultures. And I have seen some just unbelievable things. I've been to India and New Zealand, and I've been cage diving with great white sharks, and I've seen baby humpback whales jumping in the ocean. I've done so many things that I just can't believe were part of my life. And again, part of that is EMDR. Before I did EMDR sessions that focused on my fear of flying, I hadn't been on an airplane for 11 years, and I'd be terrified just to think about getting on an airplane. The other thing that I really like about living here, specifically in Singapore, is the convenience of it. When you live in the United States, which I love the United States. There's my heart breaks at times still to have left it behind. But when you live in the United States, it's pretty normal for you to drive 40 minutes to work every day. And in Singapore, it's not like that at all. I mean, I drive 5 minutes a day. Everything is so convenient. The grocery store from where I live I can literally walk across the street. So, but living in Singapore is like living in Manhattan. I mean, it is like a city. There's big buildings everywhere, except it's hot because you're on the equator. So those are some things that I like about living in this part of the world.
That's beautiful. That's really awesome. Have you gone back to visit every once in a while to the United States, like holidays or what, like something like that, or?
Yeah, for sure. Last summer we did a family trip where we went to Colorado and saw some relatives. And then we went to Monument Valley, Las Vegas. We did some sort of touring around the Southwest in the United States, which was great. It's nice to go home. It's always shocking to go home and to sort of be with my people again.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really hard. I mean, to fly, the actual flight from Singapore to the mainland of the United States, so it's usually Seattle, San Francisco, or Los Angeles, is 11 and a half hours.
Mm.
And then you end up taking another flight to where you're going. And the jet lag is brutal. Like all of a sudden, day is night and night is day, and you just have to suck it up and stay awake. Um, so it can be quite hard to travel back, but I get back every year, every other year.
Oh, that's really cool. That's cool. Yeah, so you mentioned prior to EMDR, your main motivation, I guess, for EMDR is the fear of flying and whatnot. So from what I get, you've had positive experiences doing the in-person version, would you say?
Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit of that story. My main motivation was not the fear of flying. That was a secondary issue that I did EMDR with. My main motivation was I had explosive PTSD symptoms from my childhood. I remember one particular incident. I'm driving in traffic and I'm punching the steering wheel of my car because I'm so angry about something that happened to me in my childhood. And it was somewhere from there I was able to put two and two together and say, something's not right here. And I started researching PTSD and how it affects people. And that's when I recognized how many of my emotional symptoms were from having PTSD from my childhood and trauma from my childhood. So I ended up seeing an in-person EMDR therapist in Boulder, Colorado, and it was amazing. Like it absolutely changed me within 4 or 5 sessions. But I the fear of flying thing, it was during those PTSD EMDR sessions. I guess I was talking to the therapist or whatever, and I mentioned my fear of flying, and he said, we can do EMDR on that. And we did. And it worked amazingly well. I mean, I had to have the guts to get on an airplane again. My first flight was to Seattle, but it was amazing. Like because of the EMDR, I felt okay. Now, when I'm on a plane and there's nasty turbulence and things like that, I'm still uncomfortable, like everyone else. But I've flown everywhere at this point. So it wasn't fear of flying that got me into EMDR though. It was the childhood trauma stuff. I was having PTSD symptoms that were kind of devastating my ability to interact with people and to function emotionally in life. And the EMDR took care of that pretty quick.
Absolutely. Now thinking, okay, so you did the in-person, and what was that moment where the light bulb went in your head and be like, okay, virtual EMDR might be a really great idea. And what were your steps into doing that? And
Yeah. So I remember, this is crazy. I remember distinctly being in the EMDR therapist's office. We were working together and sort of looking over to my right, and there was like a table with a lamp on it. And I just remember this moment because it's such a life-changing moment for me. And recognizing in that moment, I was looking over that way. Someone can figure out a way to put this on the internet. Someone can figure out a way to automate the EMDR process and have a computer or a website ask you the same questions that a therapist asks, automate the EMDR processing. That's when you do the eye movements or listen to the tones in your ears. And that's it. I had the idea, and it was just after that I started researching EMDR more, and I hired some kid. He was 18 or something, lived in Eastern Europe, and I paid him all of $200 for the first version of our software. which was terrible. And
Yeah.
in retrospect, totally not usable, but
Trial.
that's it. Like, yeah, that's it. I had the first version of the EMDR software, and it took some years from there. So that's when I first had this idea. Uh, it's fascinating. I remember going to my friend Jonathan Stanley and saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about calling this virtual EMDR. Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think it's a bad idea?" Because the term virtual is sort of a throwback internet term, and it sounds kind of out of style. And he said, "No, no, no, that's a good idea." And what's amazing is, since I coined the term virtual EMDR, every EMDR therapist uses the term virtual EMDR now. Like anywhere online, you find the term virtual EMDR. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's been a fascinating ride to go from uh, having an idea for online EMDR to creating a company that does online self-guided EMDR to becoming the world's largest provider of EMDR sessions. I mean, it's just been really a journey, and that's how I first thought of it.
So when you're actually doing it and signing up for it and beginning the EMDR sessions, is it like an AI doing EMDR with the client, or how does that work?
No, it's not an AI, but so when you start, you can select. Let me back up here. Before you even start, we offer a series of professional grade, therapist grade self-assessment tests for anxiety, for childhood trauma, for addiction, for anger, all that kind of stuff. So you can start doing those to look at your symptoms. Those are free, by the way, on the website, whether you're a member or not. And then from there, you can choose what kind of EMDR session you want to do. We offer 7 different programs or protocols. So you can do a PTSD and trauma EMDR session, a anxiety EMDR session, a depression EMDR session, addictions, fears and phobias, and grief and loss. And then once you start the session, it replicates the steps of EMDR that a therapist would do. So right on your screen, it will say, for example, "Hi, Jacob, how are you feeling today?" And you type in your answer. And it'll say right on your screen, on a scale of 0 to 10, how are you feeling emotionally about this issue or that issue? You put your answer there.
Mhm.
And as you go through the process, it helps you figure out what you want to focus on in EMDR, which is formulating your target. And then when you're ready, it has you click the button and you start the actual processing. That means you're watching on your screen the moving object, you're listening to the tones in your ears going back and forth. So it basically just takes the steps that a therapist would guide you through, and it replaces those with asking you questions. Um, It also, your answers to all the questions are recorded in a PDF. So if you want to, you have access to your previous sessions and what kind of stuff you were working on, or you can download your PDF if you're working with a therapist as well and take it to a therapist. So
Okay, so you're almost encouraging them to also do in-person therapy as well as this. So you're kind of keeping the human therapist kind of in the loop a little bit on what you're doing.
yes and no. So I always encourage anyone to get in-person therapy as well as EMDR personally, because EMDR can help you fix your fear of driving or your worries about something traumatic that happened to you in your childhood. But what EMDR, especially self-guided EMDR, cannot do is give you an opportunity to sort of talk to someone and unpack and say to your therapist, "Here's what happened to me, and here's the symptoms that I have because of it now, and here's why I'm angry at my parents or my siblings or whatever." You can't do that doing EMDR alone. So virtual EMDR will fix or remove the symptoms that you're having. You can do that on your own. But what it won't do is give you an opportunity to sit and talk to somebody about why you're feeling the way that you are and have a plan and all the kind of things that come with a one-to-one interaction. So I just did a YouTube video on this exact topic. In fact, I always recommend to people to have an in-person talk therapist as well, because it really helps to balance things out.
Absolutely. I also have another question too. So when you're talking about these different, like, let's say treatment plans, or there's the anxiety one, the PTSD one, depression ones, do they use the language of like SUDS, the substance units of disturbance when it comes to,
Uh-huh.
so is that applied in it as well?
We don't call it SUDS in our program, but yes, it's the same concept. And for anyone listening, what he means by SUDS is you when you do EMDR, you decide for yourself how upsetting a thought or a memory is on a scale of 0 to 10. 10 meaning I'm unbelievably emotionally upset right now just thinking about this. 0 being that it doesn't bother me at all. And yeah, the virtual EMDR, our self-guided EMDR programs do the exact same thing. In fact, one of the things that we do is when someone signs up for virtual EMDR, we help them track their level of emotional distress over time. So let's say at the beginning of your session, you're an 8 out of 10. You're pretty upset about something. And then towards the end of your session, it also asks you uh, uh, to rate how emotional you're feeling and to see if you're feeling better towards the end of your session. So yes, it does. Through doing this, it allows you to monitor your progress doing EMDR therapy on yourself.
Yeah, it's funny when I explain to my clients and I try to simplify it, because that's like a lot of big words like substance units of disturbance. I try to simplify it in the sense of like sometimes anger, stress from a 0 to 10, 10 being the most extreme frustration, anger, stress to like 0, which in EMDR therapy, the ultimate goal is to always get the client to be a 0 by the end of the session. If you are at that in the later stages of, let's just like 6, 7, and 8 or farther. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that happens when people use virtual EMDR is they'll find that their units of distress go down over time. But as you work on a particular problem or issue or memory over the course of a few sessions, you're going to start to just feel differently about it. So it will still be a bad memory, the time that you were, robbed at gunpoint and beaten or whatever, but it won't be a charged bad memory anymore. It won't bother you anymore while you're standing brushing your teeth before you go to bed at night. It'll just become sort of a normal bad memory in the back of your brain somewhere.
Okay. I'm also wondering too. So let's just say like the average person like signs up for it and whatnot. How soon do they get to the stages that involve the bilateral simulation? So that would be like stages like 4 and on. Like, could they get to that relatively right away just by clicking some buttons and just doing the assessments and so forth?
Yeah, so they can get to it in their first session. One of the things that I find, and with due respect to any EMDR therapist who listens to this, is there is a belabored assessment process with EMDR therapists where they do 2 or 3 or even 4 sessions of just looking at the person's history, talking to them about what happened before they actually start EMDR. Virtual EMDR, it's not like that at all. You know what the problem is coming in the door generally.
Mm-hmm.
I was robbed at gunpoint and beaten, and it bothers me. And so you get into desensitization. That's the first time you use EMDR processing to work on a bad memory in your first session. Our program is designed for you to jump in and get going with EMDR and to start modifying your behavior right away so that you feel better.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because I can just imagine how like a therapist who, like you said, would watch this and be like, well, how do they know when they're ready or this or that? Or how in tune do you have to be? Because like one of our biggest rules is they have to be significantly aware and attuned with their body when it comes to like their trauma, emotions, and this or that. Where, like you said, like a lot of times you might not get to stage 3 or 4 or higher for a long time due to all the trauma you have in your body, not and like the lack of ability for you to attune with all of that. So again, for those particular clients, it's actually not safe to get into the bilateral stimulation until they get more attuned with their body and their emotions by more mindfulness and meditation and other dialectical behavior therapy related skills. I'm sure you're familiar with the container or safe place and stuff like that. So
I am, yes. And this is where I have, I guess, sort of a disagreement with the EMDR community. I don't believe that a lot of people need all that stuff. And also, there's this notion that EMDR is not safe. If EMDR was not safe, the government would step in the United States, Germany, the UK, Australia, any of these countries around the world, France, I could go on and on, who have EMDR associations. But of course they haven't, because there's nothing unsafe about EMDR. The worst thing that's going to happen to you doing some EMDR is you might have some feelings at the end of your session because you were thinking about something that happened. So one of the things that we make clear with people, we offer a free trial to anyone who signs up. And the purpose of that free trial is to let somebody try EMDR on themselves before they decide if they want to actually buy virtual EMDR. Some people are not capable of feeling comfortable feeling their feelings, a small percent of people. And for those folks, when they email me and they say, I don't know about virtual EMDR, I don't know about how it makes me feel, I say to them, okay, here's your money back if you paid. You may want to go see an EMDR therapist instead. The vast majority of people, on the other hand, who sign up for virtual EMDR, follow the instructions and do the program, get amazing results. And the worst thing that's going to happen to them is after the session, they may feel, I'm pretty upset because I was thinking about something that happened between my parents and I. It is uncomfortable emotionally. But that's it. I mean, there's nothing actually unsafe about it. One other thing I wanted to say about this, when you see an EMDR therapist, you need to get your work done in an hour as a client. And what I mean by that is, next Tuesday at 3 p.m., you have 1 hour with your EMDR therapist. You got to figure out what you're doing, do your session. And if you don't get it done next Tuesday at 3 p.m., you have to wait another week before you go back. One of the cool things about virtual EMDR is you have unlimited access to the program, so you can try things out. Do I want to do a session on that time 30 years ago when I was bullied in elementary school and it really upset me? You can do a session on that, and maybe you won't get much out of the session. Maybe you won't, when you do the EMDR part, maybe you won't really feel differently. It's okay. You have unlimited sessions. Just throw that session away, come back tomorrow if you want. You don't have to wait a week. So this idea of doing all this preparation and getting ready for EMDR, you don't really need to do that, because you can start experimenting with yourself, how EMDR affects you, what kind of things you want to focus on, and go ahead and do it on your own.
Yeah, I know through my experience, even in the training, for me, I had a lot of uncomfortable emotions that came up that I may or may not have been like ready for like 3 or 4 days after the training. Even when I was at work, I was feeling a lot of just anger within myself. And my fear, to the point of, I'm a trained mental health professional and I struggled managing my emotions, and I'm a licensed mental health professional who has coping skills. My concern is like the average everyday person who doesn't have those coping skills. So when you said danger, you're right. Like if it was like a really crazy, messed up therapeutic intervention, I guess the biggest concern for people is like suicidal ideation, suicidal attempts. I guess those would be, I mean, the things that would definitely probably get a therapeutic modality banned too. So it's tough. I think my biggest thing is just making the client fully aware. And I think I probably do this too much for safety reasons. It's just making them feel safe, making sure they have the coping tools. So when they do have these emotions and feelings, that they know how to handle and manage them as time goes on.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons that for some people, it's a good idea to do talk therapy as well. First of all, it's always a good idea to talk to somebody. Jacob, if you and I were friends in our personal lives, I can call you up on the phone and say, dude, I had this big fight with my wife, and we can just talk. We can unpack all the stuff that's going on in our lives. And that's especially beneficial for people who are doing self-guided EMDR. Does everyone need it? Absolutely not. So one of the things that people use, including myself, use virtual EMDR for is behavioral modification, changing the way that we approach certain things, changing the way we feel about certain things. You know, those kind of things are not going to require you to need to talk to somebody after or anything like that. And to be fair, you don't need to talk to somebody and unpack your problem or issue after virtual EMDR. It really depends on what kind of a person you are. For me, through doing EMDR, I feel really lucky, really blessed to be aware of my emotions, and to have good boundaries with my emotions. So if I do EMDR on myself and it's something that would be emotionally uncomfortable after the session, I'm just aware that, yeah, I'm feeling that way, and that doesn't mean anything. I'm not a good person. I'm not a bad person. Those are just the feelings that I'm having about something that happened to me.
Well, it's also interesting you said like seeing a talk therapist or EMDR therapist. Like there's therapists out there who have their main therapist, but they also have two therapists, and the second one being just their peer EMDR therapist.
Yes. So yeah, this is interesting. We have a lot of people who are traditional talk therapists who also have their client use the virtual EMDR program. And the way that that works is they don't need to use virtual EMDR during their talk therapy session, but during talk therapy that week, they'll figure out, you know, you're afraid to confront your boss, you're afraid to do this or that. And then they'll send their client home and say, I want you to do a couple virtual EMDR sessions on this particular issue this week. And then I want you to come back next week to talk therapy. And I want you to tell me what kind of results you got, how you're feeling differently about the problem or issue with your boss. So we have a lot of talk therapists who are also integrating the virtual EMDR self-guided program into their practices. I get therapists who email me all the time about this because the two of them work so well together. But yes, there are also people, if they can afford it, because it's really expensive, who see a talk therapist and also an in-person EMDR therapist at the same time.
Can't imagine how much that is, but that is
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah. And by the way, there are advantages and disadvantages to doing online self-guided EMDR. One advantage is it's completely private. You don't need to sit and tell a stranger, you know, about your worst problems and issues and all that. Another advantage is that it costs about 5% of what an EMDR therapist would charge. But to be clear, a disadvantage is you don't have a person sitting next to you that you can say, hey, you know, what about this feeling I'm having, or whatever you want to talk about. So there are plus and minuses to both. So for example, our program, Virtual EMDR, we work with some police, firefighters, military veterans, you know, basically around the country, Colorado to California. And one of the things that we see from that particular community is they don't want to sit down with a therapist who's a stranger and start talking about their worst feelings and emotions. So that particular community, one of the things that they tell us again and again is they love the fact that it's private. They don't have to talk to anybody about what they're working on. I have a memory of one particular police officer that we worked with who was a trooper on the road on the highways. And he was over his 30-year career, he was the first person on many motor vehicle accidents. And he would walk up to a car and look in the car, and there are people who are just crushed and dead and bleeding everywhere. And 30 years of that just really took its toll on him. And he talked about how much he loved the virtual EMDR program and how it really transformed the PTSD symptoms he was having because of that. But he also talked about one of the things that he loved was he didn't have to sit down with a stranger and talk about what he saw on the job.
Wow. Can I add something? It's so funny. I just did another podcast about a week or so ago about artificial intelligence and therapy, and one of the guests said through research, people are actually saying that where they would actually rather see an AI therapist on the computer rather than a human therapist, due to like the judgment that they would face from one human being to another. So I feel like it's a really interesting point you made just right there. It's
So, Jacob, that absolutely blows my mind what you just said, because that's something that I've never thought of before. When people see their therapist, even if they really like their therapist, they want to hold some stuff back. Like, I don't want to tell Jacob that I ate a whole pizza last night because I feel bad about it, and I don't want to start talking about my binge eating.
yep.
And with an AI therapist, you can just say all that. And yeah, so what you just said is amazing. Um, by the way, that relates to virtual EMDR. We have what's, I guess, called Project 3 that we're working on right now, which is integrating AI into virtual EMDR. Uh, um, it's in the early stages, and it'll probably be a couple of years before that's live. But that, yeah, that makes perfect sense that people would want to talk to an AI instead of a therapist.
Obviously, human therapists don't like that due to like the financial competition, the occupational competition. But yeah, but you can't deny the truth, and research does indicate that people do feel that way, and it's valid.
Careers change, though. Those human therapists who can no longer do what they're doing because AI steps into the space will end up having a different key role in the process. For example, overseeing the different AIs that they have working with their clients. There'll always be a place for those therapists. That place will just change, or their role will just change some. I think that's inevitable.
So you think eventually like human therapists will naturally decline due to the efficiency of AI and computers and stuff like that?
We'll see what happens. I mean, so I am no expert on this at all, but AI doubles in intelligence every 3 months or something like that. I might not be right in the number of months, and it grows exponentially. So they say that in the next 2 or 3 years, AI will be so much more intelligent than humans. Absolutely, AI is going to remove some careers. There's no doubt about that. So right now, if I want to hire somebody to write a blog for the virtual EMDR website, I wouldn't do that anymore. AI can actually write a better story than a human could. And then all you have to do is edit that story a little bit if it's too long or too wordy or whatever. And this is only the beginning of AI. Sometime in the future, it's going to be basically impossible for or at least difficult for a human being to write a story as good as AI. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I know the one thing I do like about it is that when you're with a client, talking in the session, like especially through Zoom, they do all your notes, like the talking points that you actually said. Now they're not fully accurate and you need to double check it. But
Mhm.
however, like one of the guests said, like eventually that's going to get better and improve more and also save time for therapists as well. So,
AI will never remove the need for human connection, though. So
right.
one of the worst things that's happening in our society right now is people are attached to their screens all the time. And I think that one of the things that's going to happen is we're going to see sort of a bounce back from this, where people recognize they need real human contact. They need to sit down with a cup of coffee and talk to someone that they know, person to person. And I don't think that that will ever be replaced by AI or by computers. And I am guessing that sometime in the near future, people are going to want to have human interaction more. And it's going to become more normal to want to be with people than it is now.
I hope so. I really do. Like, another point too. So again, in this show, obviously, we're not trying to bash humans, AIs, or virtual like therapeutic modalities. It's funny, like when you look at the EMDR, like you said, biggest thing we want to do is prevent suicide ideation through therapeutic modality, of course. But a lot of therapists will go in there like, oh, I want EMDR. It's going to get me a lot of clients, which may be true, but like you said about the virtual aspect, I've heard just as much negative stories about human therapists providing EMDR therapy than the AI version or whatever, just because, again, therapists will try to bring the client in too fast doing the bilateral stimulation. Like, I can't tell you how many negative stories I heard about EMDR. And again, it's not EMDR, it's the clinician that's not doing it in the correct manner.
It's also the client. One of the things that I've learned being in this industry is when you work in mental health, you attract people with mental health problems. That makes perfect sense, right? And one of the things that I've recognized is, and I mean this respectfully to anyone who's a client, to anyone that's struggling, but when they don't get the results they want from seeing their talk therapist or their CBT therapist, people are quick to say, it's the therapist's fault. The therapist didn't fix me the way that I wanted them to fix me. And it's not always that simple for therapists. Some people's mental health issues are complicated. They need more therapy. They need different therapy. It depends on what they're doing. They need a mix of talk therapy plus EMDR plus 12-step recovery. They need to get the formula right to get better. And one of the things you'll see, especially in the internet age, is they're quick to blame their therapist, to say, I did 4 sessions with him and my whole life isn't perfect now, so he's a bad therapist. And I don't think that's the case at all. It just depends on the person and how much self-responsibility they're willing to have, I think, is a big part of it.
You're right. Yeah. Yep. There's like the client's part. And also, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm not connecting with their therapist. Maybe a different therapist may be better too. So
exactly.
Into it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I've had different therapists in my life, and I recommend talk therapy for anyone, no matter how mentally well you are or happy you are. There's always an opportunity to talk to a therapist and to say, I'd like to fix this about my life and I'd like to improve that, and to have a therapist guide you through the process. And one of the things that's just amazed me with different therapists I've had in my life is their approach to therapy. You'll get that therapist who's tough with you and will say, well, you didn't do the things I said that you should do last week. And then you have the other therapist who's gentle and slow with you and says, just focus on self-acceptance. Take your time to make these changes. So absolutely, different therapists have different flavors as far as treatment goes, and finding the right one is really important for anyone.
The sports coach and the players, right? Where you have to know how to coach your players, where it's just like, some players need the hard-nosed, assertive approach. Hey, you didn't do A, B, and C. And some players you cannot do that with. You need more of a softer touch.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, people have to find, all right, we're not talking about EMDR, we're talking about talk therapy or CBT therapy or whatever now, but people have to find the right match for them. This is crazy. This is some years ago now, 5 years ago now, I was matched with a therapist online who turned out to be a lady from Mexico who lived in the United States. And she had a thick Mexican accent and was just very different. And in our first session, I was like, I don't think she's going to be a good fit. I need somebody that I have a similar background with. But then it turns out she's like the greatest therapist ever, even though we have a different cultural background, even though we're different in so many ways. She just had these basic core principles that she was teaching during the sessions that were just transformative for me. So you never know until you go and try a therapist to, to determine if that's the right therapist for you.
That's a phenomenal point for sure. So now as we're winding down, I always like asking my guests this really cool question about like goals. And I know we talked a little bit about what you want to do in general, but let's say in the next 5 years or 10 years, what do you hope for yourself and your company? What do you hope to accomplish as a goal or multiple goals?
So I love this question because it really opens the door for me to talk about a few things that I want to talk about. First of all, Virtual EMDR, we're passionate about working with first responders, military vets, police. I mean, these are people who they represent a pretty small portion of the clients who use Virtual EMDR, but we give Virtual EMDR out to that community for free. And we've given it away to thousands of military vets, first responders, firefighters, that whole community. All they have to do is email us and we set them up with a free account. So I want to keep working with that community because they have unique mental health struggles. Going back to what I said earlier about that trooper who we worked with, He would be the first person on auto accidents over and over and over. And his job was he would walk up to a car and there were smashed people inside. And he just had to take his feelings and just stuff them inside for 30 years because of that. So I want to keep working with that particular community in the next 5 years. Virtual EMDR wants to continue working with the addiction and mental health community. We have an addictions protocol, which is based on the Deter EMDR addictions protocol. And we've worked with some inpatients and drug rehabs already where they're offering virtual EMDR as part of their inpatient process. Like we've worked with, drug rehabs from Chicago to Arizona to California. And we've even worked with, domestic violence organizations in England. So I want to keep, we as a company, Virtual EMDR, one of our goals is to keep working with those communities that need us. And the last thing is, in the next 5 years, we are launching a suite of new programs. So right now, in the next 6 months, we're going to be launching the Virtual EMDR Youth Program, which is a simplified version of EMDR that someone can do on themselves for people who are aged, say, 12 to 17. We're still working on that, but that's completely finished. We're in testing with that. We're launching a gratitude EMDR program, which is designed to help the user recognize all the things that they have to be grateful for in their life. Because as humans, we are pre-programmed to always be negative, like, oh, why do I have to pay this bill? And why are my kids like this and all that? And we should be pre-programmed to be focused on all the good things we have instead. So that program is almost finished. It's in testing. And lastly, we're launching a personal performance EMDR program. And what that's designed to do is to help you step up and deal with the changes that you want to make in your life that you've been sort of afraid to make. I use EMDR on myself right now on a regular basis. And I'm not focusing on PTSD and trauma and things that happened in my past. I am focusing on behavioral modifications, things that I want to change and improve in myself. And I get amazing results through doing EMDR on myself. One of the best results that I get is that I can turn down the chatter in my brain, that voice that we all have inside our brain. And when I do EMDR on myself, it's amazing how I feel afterwards. I notice smells. I can hear things more clearly. So I can hear birds singing in the trees. And you can hear those without EMDR, but you just don't notice them. They're part of the background static. Colors are more vivid. I feel more present. So I can modify my behavioral state through EMDR. And that's one of the other programs that we're launching. I guess that's a lot sooner than in 5 years, though, which was your question. Virtual EMDR is already the world's largest provider of EMDR sessions, but I feel like there are a lot of people that we can still bring EMDR to who don't have access to it. And I want to work with that community because ultimately the reason that I got into doing this was when I first created the virtual EMDR program, my idea was I'm just going to help some people. Maybe I'll put it on the internet for free. We'll see what happens. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be able to make a career out of it, be able to offer, 50,000 plus EMDR sessions over the years to people. So my goal is to keep providing EMDR to people who need it so that they can feel better about themselves and their lives.
Wow, that's really something. That's really a lot of great goals. And again, I just want to thank you for all the time that you gave us. I really appreciate it. If any of my audience members do want to get a hold of you or make contact with you, is there like a website or an email that could use to send you a message?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to virtualemdr.com, you can contact us through there. If you want to contact me personally, you can contact us through there and it will filter its way to me. Just a couple other things really quick. Again, we do have a free trial. If you just want to sign up and try the product, you can try it free for a few days, see what you think of the sessions, and then just cancel it if you don't want to proceed. And lastly, I created a promo code for this podcast appearance, and you get 20% off if you just enter TTC20 when you sign up. And that's if you choose to sign up. You can just do the 3-day trial and then just not do it. But anyways, if people have any questions, just go to virtualemdr.com. You can contact me there. And you'll also find, links to our YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff where you can, see more videos about what we're doing, what kind of things we're working on. And also one last thing at virtualemdr.com, I mentioned earlier that we have professional grade, therapist grade self-assessment tests. So if you want to try some testing on yourself for addictions, for anger, for emotions, for trauma, you can find all that on the website as well.
Wow, that's all amazing, great stuff. And to all my audience members, all that information will be in the show notes. So it'll be one click away. So you'll have no problem getting there and accessing that. So again, thank you so much, Jeffrey. It was a great pleasure and honor having you on the show. It was truly a blast.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you as well. And you're making me miss home. I hear your Midwest, I hear your Midwest accent, and it makes you want to jump on a plane and go home. So
yeah. I know I got to do more traveling in my time too. Yeah, where you live, it sounds amazing too. So
it's got its ups and downs, but I definitely miss America. But yeah, it was amazing to do this. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and talk.
I again want to thank Jeffrey for being an awesome and amazing special guest on my show. I just want to thank all of my listeners for your support, and just to inform everyone that the information expressed in this episode was not meant to be taken as therapeutic advice. If you do find yourself struggling with any type of mental health or addiction issues, please seek the care of a medical doctor or a licensed mental health therapist. And if anyone has any further questions for me, you can reach me at my email address, behaviorhealthintegration121@gmail.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Jacob Menig, where you will find more educational posts on psychotherapy, trauma, and addiction. And finally, you can follow me on my website, which is behaviorhealthintegration.org. I also want to inform everyone that there is a great new device out there called Comigo. It's a breathing device meant to control and manage your breathing rates and the depth of your breathing as you inhale and exhale to again help relieve any type of anxiety and stress-like symptoms. And if you do put the BHI podcast into the promo code, you get $30 off this amazing device. It is a once-in-a-lifetime deal, and you will not be disappointed. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a good day. Bye.